A wildfire ignites on a hillside above one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in America. Within hours, it's racing downhill at 1 mile per minute, driven by Santa Ana winds gusting at 80 miles per hour. Firefighters arrive. They connect hoses to fire hydrants. They open the valves, and the hydrants run dry. 3 water tanks serving the Pacific Palisades, each holding 1 million gallons, drain completely in less than 12 hours. The first empties at 4:45 p.m., the second at 8:30 p.m., the third at 3 a.m. the following morning. Fire crews watch water pressure drop to 0 in the hills above. Without water, they can't fight the flames. Without pressure, the system can't refill the tanks. The fire burns unchecked. By the time it's contained 24 days later, 29 people are dead. Over 16,000 structures are destroyed. The damage exceeds $20 billion, the costliest wildfire in American history, and 117 million gallons of water sat empty in a nearby reservoir that had been offline for nearly a year. This is the story of the Los Angeles fires. Not just a natural disaster, but a catastrophic failure of the infrastructure designed to protect the city. How a water system built for routine fires collapsed when faced with a megafire. How warnings were ignored. How a closed reservoir became the symbol of preventable tragedy. And how, on the deadliest day in Los Angeles firefighting history, the hydrants ran dry while the city burned. The perfect storm. January 7th, 2025, 9:30 a.m. The Palisades fire begins in brush above Pacific Palisades, an affluent coastal neighborhood wedged between the Santa Monica Mountains and the Pacific Ocean. Home to actors, executives, and beachfront estates worth tens of millions of dollars. The National Weather Service had issued red flag warnings days earlier. Santa Ana winds, hot, dry winds blowing from inland deserts toward the coast, were forecast to reach hurricane force. Humidity would drop below 10%. Any spark could become an inferno. At 9:30 a.m., that spark arrived. The fire spreads quickly. Not the slow burn of a typical wildfire, but an explosive advance fueled by bone-dry vegetation and winds that carry embers a mile ahead of the flames. Within an hour, the fire crowns, leaping from brush into the tops of trees, creating a tunnel of flame that moves faster than people can run. By noon, evacuation orders are issued. By 1 p.m., traffic on Sunset Boulevard and Palisades Drive is gridlocked. Residents abandon their cars and flee on foot, dragging suitcases and pets. Ash rains down like snow. At 4:46 p.m., the fire crosses Honoapialani Highway into the heart of Palisades. The flames are moving at 1 mile per minute. Entire blocks ignite simultaneously. Swimming pools boil, cars on melted tires slump into the pavement, and the fire hydrants begin to fail. The water system collapses. Pacific Palisades sits on steep terrain rising from sea level to 1,500 feet elevation. To deliver water to homes in the hills, the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, LAWP, relies on 3 large storage tanks perched at high points in the neighborhood. Each tank holds roughly 1 million gallons. Water flows from these tanks downhill to homes and businesses. When the tanks are full, gravity provides enough pressure to push water through hydrants. When the tanks empty, pressure drops, and firefighting becomes impossible. On January 7th, the tanks were full. LADWP had prepared for the windstorm by topping off all storage across the city. The system was ready, but the system wasn't designed for this. Janice Quinones, LADWP's chief engineer, later explained, "The Palisades water system sustained 4 times its usual demand for 15 hours straight. 4 times normal demand for 15 hours, every hydrant in the neighborhood running at maximum capacity. Fire crews pumping water as fast as the system could deliver it. The tanks couldn't keep up. At 4:45 p.m., the first tank ran dry, 8 hours into the fire. At 8:30 p.m., the second tank emptied, 12 hours in. At 3 a.m. on January 8th, while the fire still raged, the third tank drained completely. With no water in the tanks, pressure in the upper elevations dropped to 0. Firefighters connected to hydrants in the hills turned valves and got nothing. They radioed for water trucks. They repositioned to hydrants at lower elevations, where some pressure remained. But by then, the fire was already consuming entire hillsides. Crews tried to refill the tanks by pumping water uphill from the main distribution system, but the flow rate couldn't match the demand. The fire was draining the system faster than it could be replenished. Eric Porce, director of the California Institute for Water Resources, put it simply: urban water systems are designed for house fires, not landscape-scale wildfires. The infrastructure worked exactly as designed, for routine emergencies. But this wasn't routine. This was a fire moving at highway speeds through a densely populated area with 1,500 feet of vertical relief. The tanks couldn't hold enough water, the pipes couldn't deliver fast enough, and the pressure dropped to nothing. The Santa Ynez Reservoir. Half a mile from the burning Palisades stood the Santa Ynez Reservoir, a concrete basin capable of holding 117 million gallons of water, enough to fill all 3 neighborhood tanks 39 times over. It was empty. Not empty because of the fire. Empty because LADWP had taken it offline in February 2024, 11 months before the Palisades fire, for repairs to meet federal drinking water regulations. The reservoir had a cover. The cover had deteriorated. To comply with EPA standards for safe drinking water storage, LADWP needed to repair or replace the cover. So in February 2024, they drained the reservoir and shut it down. For 11 months, it sat empty. Through the hot, dry summer, through the fall fire season, through the red flag warnings in early January. When the fire broke out on January 7th, the Santa Ynez Reservoir held 0 gallons. California Governor Gavin Newsom ordered an investigation. How could a major reservoir be offline during fire season? Why wasn't it filled as a precaution when extreme fire weather was forecast? LADWP's response was measured. Marty Adams, a 40-year veteran of the department, acknowledged that had the reservoir been operational, it might have extended water availability in the Palisades. But he also noted that given the intensity and scale of the fire, even 117 million gallons would likely have been drained. The math is stark. The 3 tanks combined held 3 million gallons and emptied in 15 hours. At that rate, 117 million gallons would last about 23 days. The Palisades fire burned for 24 days, but those extra hours, or even extra days, might have made the difference between controlling the fire and watching it consume the neighborhood. We'll never know. Because when it mattered most, the Santa Ynez Reservoir was empty. The geography problem. The Pacific Palisades isn't flat. It's a series of ridges and canyons rising steeply from the coast. Homes cling to hillsides, roads wind through narrow defiles, and water has to be pumped uphill against gravity. This geography creates what Jeffrey Mount, a senior fellow at the Public Policy Institute of California, calls an infrastructure bottleneck. Water flows from reservoirs into a complex network of pipes, pumps, and storage tanks. At each elevation gain, the system needs enough pressure to push water higher. When the tanks at the top run dry, there's no pressure. And without pressure, you can't pump water uphill. It's like trying to fill a bucket at the top of a tower using a garden hose with no water pressure. The physics don't work. During the fire, LADWP tried to reroute water from other parts of the system. They attempted to increase flow to the Palisades tanks, but at one point, crews had to evacuate because the fire was too intense. The infrastructure itself was burning. In the hills, firefighters faced a cruel irony. Homes ablaze above them, the Pacific Ocean a few hundred yards below them, and hydrants that wouldn't flow. Some residents tried to defend their properties with garden hoses. One man was photographed on his roof, spraying water from a hose as flames closed in. Another stood on a driveway directing a stream of water at burning embers on a neighbor's roof. These weren't trained firefighters. They were homeowners using residential water systems designed to water lawns, not fight wildfires, to protect what they could. Many succeeded in saving their homes. Many didn't. The Eaton Fire. 60 miles east, in Altadena near Pasadena, a second fire ignited on January 7th. The Eaton Fire started at 6:18 p.m., hours after the Palisades fire, but spread even faster. Altadena sits at the base of the San Gabriel Mountains, where Santa Ana winds funnel through canyons with terrifying speed. The fire exploded through neighborhoods built decades ago, with minimal defensible space. Firefighters in Altadena reported the same problem: hydrants with low water pressure or no water at all. The causes were similar: high demand overwhelming the system, tanks draining faster than they could refill, infrastructure designed for house fires, not megafires racing through entire communities. By the time both fires were fully contained on January 31st, the Eaton fire had killed 17 people and destroyed over 7,000 structures. The Palisades fire had killed 12 and destroyed over 6,000 structures. Combined, 29 dead, 16,250 structures gone, $20 billion in damage, 2 fires, 2 different neighborhoods, same infrastructure failure. The warnings. This wasn't the first time Los Angeles faced catastrophic wildfire risk. It wasn't even the first time hydrants had failed. In October 2019, the Getty fire burned 745 acres in the hills near Brentwood. Firefighters reported water pressure problems. LADWP acknowledged the issue and said they were working to improve the system. In 2020, the Thomas Fire, farther north in Ventura County, exposed similar vulnerabilities. Urban water systems not designed for landscape fires, tanks draining too quickly, insufficient capacity at high elevations. Experts had been warning for years. A 2014 report by the Hawaii Wildfire Management Organization noted that even in Hawaii, a place known for rain, urban water systems couldn't handle major wildfires. The same applied to California. Climate change was making fires worse. The 2023 wildfire season in California saw record temperatures and unprecedented fire behavior. The 2024 season wasn't much better. By January 2025, Southern California had gone months without significant rain. Vegetation was tinder dry. The Santa Ana winds were forecast to be among the strongest in years. And when the fires came, the water system failed exactly as predicted. The cost. 29 people died, 17 in the Eaton fire, 12 in the Palisades fire. They died in their homes, in their cars trying to evacuate, in the hours before dawn when the fire moved too fast to escape. Over 16,000 structures were destroyed. Homes, businesses, schools, churches, entire blocks reduced to ash and twisted metal. The historic Palisades Charter High School burned. The theater Palisades burned. Grocery stores, banks, restaurants, all gone. The economic cost exceeds $20 billion. Insured losses alone may top $15 billion, making this the costliest wildfire in U.S. history. Thousands of families lost everything. Many were underinsured or uninsured. Rebuilding will take years, perhaps decades. The human cost is harder to quantify. Communities erased, generations of memories lost, families displaced, many of whom will never return. And through it all, the question lingers. Could better infrastructure have made a difference? If the Santa Ynez Reservoir had been operational, would more homes have been saved? If the water tanks in Palisades had been larger, could firefighters have held the line? If the system had been designed for megafires instead of house fires, would fewer people have died? We can't rewrite history, but we can learn from it. The lesson. The Los Angeles fires of January 2025 were a convergence of factors: extreme weather, drought conditions, dense vegetation, and human-caused ignition. No single fix would have prevented the disaster. But the water system failure was preventable. The Santa Ynez Reservoir didn't need to be empty. It could have been repaired years earlier. It could have been prioritized when fire season approached. It could have been treated as the critical infrastructure it was. The water tanks in Pacific Palisades and Altadena didn't need to be undersized. LA knew its hillside neighborhoods were at risk. The city had decades to upgrade capacity. Instead, the infrastructure remained designed for an era when fires burned slower and smaller. This is the pattern we've seen before. CrowdStrike deploying untested updates, Southwest Airlines ignoring warnings about outdated systems, AT&T skipping peer review on network changes, Maui leaving emergency sirens silent. Organizations defer maintenance. They skip upgrades. They assume the system will hold until it doesn't. January 7th, 2025. A wildfire ignites in Pacific Palisades. Firefighters connect hoses to hydrants, and the water runs dry. 29 people died. 16,000 structures burned. $20 billion in damage. And 117 million gallons of water sat empty in a reservoir that should have been full. When systems fail, people die. And sometimes the failure is a choice.